My name is Leo, or at least it was. Back then, I was just a ghost haunting the hallways of Northgate High. Every day was the same, a symphony of slammed lockers and cruel laughter. Mark and his friends were the conductors. They saw me as nothing, less than nothing. A target, a joke, something to be pushed and prodded for their amusement. I would walk with my head down, my shoulders hunched, trying to make myself smaller, trying to disappear into the beige walls. But they always found me. It was a game to them, a daily ritual. For me, it was a slow, grinding erosion of my soul, chipping away at me piece by piece until I felt like I was just a collection of fragments. The loneliness was a physical weight. It sat on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I had no friends to sit with at lunch, no one to partner with on projects. I ate my sandwich in a bathroom stall, the smell of disinfectant my only companion. The silence of that stall was a strange kind of comfort. It was a brief escape from the constant judgment in their eyes. I would stare at the graffiti on the door, tracing the lines with my finger, and dream of a different life. A life where I wasn't the punchline. A life where my name wasn't a curse word whispered in the halls. I wanted to be someone else, anyone else. I wanted to be strong. At home, things were not much better. My room was my only sanctuary. A small, cluttered space where I could pretend the outside world didn't exist. I would lie on my bed for hours. I'd stare at the ceiling. The cracks in the plaster looked like a map to another place, a place far away from here. I imagined a version of myself who walked with confidence, a version of myself who people listened to, who they respected, or maybe even feared. Fear seemed better than pity. Fear was a kind of power and I had none. The dreams were my only escape, a temporary balm on a wound that never seemed to heal. The powerlessness was the worst part. It was a disease in my bones. I felt it every time Mark shoved me against the lockers, my books scattering across the floor. I felt it in the sting of their words, sharp and precise. I felt it in the averted gazes of other students who saw what was happening but did nothing. Their silence was a form of agreement. It told me that I deserved it, that this was my place in the world. I started to believe them. I started to think that maybe I was as worthless as they said I was. A deep, cold anger began to grow inside me, a tiny ember in a sea of despair. It was the only thing that felt real. My escape began not in a classroom but in the stale, smoky air of a back-alley poker game. I was 17. I started running errands for a local bookie named Sal. Just small things at first, delivering envelopes, picking up packages. I was invisible, which was a skill I'd perfected in the hallways of Northgate High. Sal didn't see a victim. He saw a kid who was quiet, who kept his head down, and who did what he was told without asking questions. He paid me in cash. Small bills that felt heavy in my pocket. It was the first time I felt like I had earned something. Something that was truly mine. The world outside of school was a revelation. It operated on a different set of rules. Here, respect wasn't about who your father was or how popular you were. It was about what you could do. It was about being reliable. It was about understanding the unspoken language of favors and debts. I watched Sal. I listened to the men who came to see him. They spoke in low tones about business, about risks, about opportunities. This was a different kind of education. There were no textbooks or lectures. The lessons were taught in quick glances, in carefully chosen words, and in the sudden, chilling silence that could fall over a room. I was a sponge, soaking it all in. Courage didn't come to me overnight. It grew slowly, like a weed pushing through concrete. It started with the money. $50 became 100. 100 became 500. With each dollar I felt a little taller. I started looking people in the eye. Not at school, not yet. But with Sal's associates. They were dangerous men. Men with scars and cold eyes. But they treated me with a kind of professional courtesy. I was Leo, the kid who gets things done. I wasn't a target. I was an asset. And that simple distinction changed everything. It was the first time I felt useful. It was the first time I felt seen. My dreams began to change. I stopped dreaming of escape and started dreaming of control. I saw the way Sal commanded a room with just a look. I saw the fear and respect he inspired. I wanted that. I craved it. The anger that had been a small ember inside me was now a steady flame. It wasn't just about getting away from Mark and his friends anymore. It was about building something they could never touch. Something that would make them irrelevant. I started to see a path forward, a dark and winding road that led away from the boy in the bathroom stall and toward the man I was becoming. My first real opportunity came from a simple observation. Sal's bookmaking operation was old-fashioned, all paper and pencils. A mess of ledgers and betting slips. It was inefficient, it was vulnerable. I knew computers. I spent my lonely nights learning to code, building websites that went nowhere. It was just another hobby to fill the empty hours, but now, I saw a use for it. I approached Sal one evening, my heart pounding in my chest. I proposed a system, a secure private network to manage the bets, to track the money, to make everything cleaner, faster and safer. He just looked at me, a cigarillo hanging from his lips. He was skeptical at first. He was an old school guy. He trusted paper he could hold and burn. He didn't trust machines. He thought I was just some kid with a crazy idea. But I had done my homework. I explained the risks of his current setup. A single police raid could bring it all down. A dishonest collector could skim off the top with no one being the wiser. I showed him a simple prototype on my old laptop. I demonstrated how it worked. I spoke with a confidence I didn't know I possessed. I wasn't asking him. I was telling him. I was showing him a better way to do business, a smarter way. He gave me a chance, a small one. He let me run a parallel system for a week, tracking a handful of his smaller clients. He watched me like a hawk. He tested me. He tried to find flaws, but there were none. My system was flawless. It was fast. It was secure. At the end of the week, the numbers from my laptop matched his paper ledgers exactly. But my system also flagged a collector who was short on his weekly payment. A small amount, but it was there. Something his paper system had missed. He looked at the screen, then at me. A slow smile spread across his face. He saw the value. He saw the potential. That was the moment everything shifted. I was no longer just the errand boy. I was the architect. Sal gave me a cut, a real percentage. My income exploded overnight. The money was more than I had ever seen. It was a tool. It was freedom. I bought a new car, nothing too flashy, but it was mine. I moved out of my parents' house and into a small apartment. The feeling of closing my own front door, of being in a space that belonged to me, was intoxicating. I was building a new life, one line of code at a time. The echoes of the lockers at Northgate High were beginning to fade. With money came a new kind of access. Sal started inviting me to the real meetings, the ones that happened in the back rooms of quiet restaurants, or in the basements of nondescript warehouses. I was the quiet kid in the corner with the laptop. But I was always there. I learned to listen. I learned that what wasn't said was often more important than what was. I learned to read the subtle shifts in power, the alliances that formed and shattered in the space of a single conversation. I was studying the ecosystem of the underworld, mapping out who was connected to whom, who owed favors, and who held the real power. My system became the central nervous system of Sal's operation, and soon other operations as well. Word spread, other bosses, other organizations, they wanted what I had built. They wanted the efficiency, the security. Sal acted as the broker. He introduced me, but I was the one who did the talking. I met men whose names were only spoken in whispers. They were leaders of crews involved in everything from loan sharking to smuggling. They looked at me, this young kid, and they saw a solution to their problems. I learned to negotiate. I learned to set my price and stick to it. I was selling them a service, but what I was really building was a network of my own. I started to build my own team. I couldn't do everything myself. I found other kids like me. Smart, ambitious, overlooked. A whiz at network security from the local college. A quiet girl who could move money through digital channels like a ghost. A tough but loyal guy from my neighborhood to handle customer service when payments were late. We were a crew of misfits, bound by a shared desire to be more than what the world had told us we were. They weren't just my employees. They were my people. I paid them well, and I gave them the one thing I had always craved: respect. In return, I received absolute loyalty. Sal's world was my training ground, but I quickly outgrew it. His vision was limited. He was content with his small piece of the city. I saw a bigger picture. I saw how all the different criminal enterprises could be connected, streamlined, and made more profitable through technology. My system wasn't just for bookmaking anymore. It was for logistics, for communication, for money laundering. I was becoming the indispensable man, the one who held all the secrets, the one who knew where all the bodies were buried, both literally and figuratively. Sal was the old guard. I was the future, and the future was coming fast. The transition of power was not a violent coup, it was a quiet absorption. Sal was getting older. The stress was getting to him. He was making mistakes. One day a major shipment went missing. Panic set in. Sal's old methods of threats and violence were getting him nowhere. His contacts were drying up. Meanwhile, I used my network. I used the digital breadcrumbs and the human intelligence I had cultivated. Within 12 hours, I knew where the shipment was, who had taken it, and how to get it back. I didn't use guns, I used information. I made one phone call to a rival boss and leveraged a secret I had about his finances. The shipment was returned the next day. That was the end of Sal's reign and the beginning of mine. It was an unspoken understanding. He saw that my methods were superior. He saw that the loyalty of the men, the real earners, had shifted to me. He gracefully stepped aside, taking a generous retirement package I offered him. He became a consultant, a ghost from the past who offered occasional advice. The organization was now mine. I was no longer just the tech guy, I was the boss, the kingpin, the man in charge. The feeling was surreal. I stood in my new office, a high-rise suite overlooking the city, and felt the immense weight and power of my new position. I expanded the empire aggressively. I diversified. We moved into legitimate businesses, real estate, import, export companies, tech startups. These were not just fronts, they were profitable enterprises that cleaned our money and gave us a respectable face. My name, Leo, was now associated with success, with sharp business acumen. The old-world Mafia bosses with their gaudy pinky rings and violent reputations were a dying breed. I was the new model, sleek, efficient, and technologically savvy. We operated in the gray areas, blurring the lines between legal and illegal until they were, honestly, indistinguishable. We were a corporation, and our business was power. Wealth poured in from all directions. I owned penthouses, a fleet of luxury cars, and a wardrobe of custom-made suits. But the money was just a scorecard. It was a means to an end. The real prize was the influence. A phone call from me could get a politician elected. It could kill a piece of legislation. It could make a company's stock soar or plummet. I was a puppeteer pulling strings that reached into every corner of the city. I had built the life I had dreamed of while hiding in that bathroom stall. I was no longer a ghost. I was the one who haunted others. I was the man in the shadows that everyone feared. Years had passed since I last thought about Northgate High. It was a distant memory, kind of like a bad dream from another lifetime. Then, one day, my assistant buzzed my intercom. A man named Mark was in the lobby. He didn't have an appointment, but he was insistent. He said he knew me from high school. The name hit me like a physical blow. Mark, the conductor of my daily misery, the architect of my teenage humiliation. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. A part of me wanted to tell my assistant to throw him out. But another darker part of me was curious. I told her to send him up. He walked into my office and for a moment, I didn't even recognize him. The years had not been kind. The arrogant swagger was gone, replaced by a desperate slump in his shoulders. He was heavier, his face puffy, his cheap suit wrinkled. He looked lost and small in the vast expanse of my office. He looked at me, at my expensive suit, at the view behind me, and his eyes widened with a mixture of awe and disbelief. He tried to smile, a pathetic, nervous gesture. "Leo? Wow. You've done well for yourself," he stammered. The sound of my name from his lips felt like a violation. He launched into his story. It was a pathetic tale of bad luck and poor choices. His small construction business was failing. He was deep in debt to the wrong kind of people. Loan sharks. He was getting threats, his family was scared, he had heard rumors about me. He heard I was a powerful man, a man who could solve problems. He was coming to me for help, he was begging. The irony was so thick I could taste it. The man who had made me feel powerless was now standing before me, completely and utterly powerless. He was asking me, the kid he used to shove into lockers, to save him. I let him talk, I watched him sweat. I listened to the desperation in his voice, I remembered everything. The way he would knock my books from my hands and laugh as I scrambled to pick them up, the nicknames, the shoves, the constant gnawing fear I felt every morning when I walked through the school gates. I remembered the faces of his friends laughing along with him. I remembered the feeling of being completely and utterly alone. All of that pain, all of that humiliation, came rushing back. But now, it was mixed with a cold, clear sense of absolute control. The tables had turned so completely it was almost poetic. I leaned back in my chair and let the silence stretch. I watched him squirm. "So you need my help," I said, my voice calm and even. It held none of the fear he was used to hearing from me. He nodded eagerly, a desperate hope in his eyes. "Yes, Leo, anything. I'll do anything." I steepled my fingers and looked at him. "I remember you, Mark. I remember you very clearly. You were the king of the hallways, you and your friends. You taught me a lot of valuable lessons about power, about how the strong treat the weak." His face paled as he began to understand this was not a friendly reunion. I didn't yell, I didn't threaten, my revenge was colder, more precise. I told him I would help. His face flooded with relief, but there were conditions. I explained that I would buy his debt from the loan sharks. He would now owe me. And my interest rates were much more creative. I laid out his new life for him. His construction company now belonged to me. He would continue to run it as my employee for a salary that was barely enough to live on. He would work 12-hour days 6 days a week. He would report directly to one of my men, a man who would not tolerate excuses. But that wasn't all. I told him about his old friends, the ones who used to stand by his side and laugh. I had my team do some research. One was a struggling accountant, another was a bartender. I made Mark an offer. For every one of his old friends he brought to me who was willing to work for me in a similar capacity, I would reduce his debt by a small fraction. I was forcing him to betray the very people who had been his source of strength. I was making him dismantle his own past piece by piece to serve my present. I was making him the instrument of their downfall as well as his own. He stood there, utterly broken. He had come to me seeking a lifeline, and I had handed him a leash. He had no choice. He agreed to everything. The look in his eyes was one of pure defeat. It was the same look I used to see in the mirror every morning. He had stripped me of my dignity, so I stripped him of his future. He would spend the rest of his life working for the ghost he once tormented. He would be a constant living reminder of my power. Every day he went to work, every paycheck he cashed, he would remember what he did, and he would regret it. That was a revenge far sweeter than any physical violence. My life now is a fortress of my own design. I live in a world of quiet luxury, of calculated moves and unspoken understandings. My penthouse is silent, a sterile sanctuary high above the noise of the city. I have everything a man could want. Money, power, influence. I can make a phone call and change a man's life or end it. People don't laugh at me. They don't look through me. When I walk into a room, they fall silent. They listen to every word I say. They show me respect, but it is a respect born of fear. It is the same kind of respect a wolf gets from a flock of sheep. I know this. I am surrounded by people, but I am more alone than ever. My team is loyal, but their loyalty is to the position, not the person. It is a professional arrangement. We are allies in a dangerous business, not friends. There are no casual conversations, no shared vulnerabilities. To show weakness is to invite betrayal. So I keep my thoughts to myself. I build walls, not just around my empire, but around my own heart. The boy who ate lunch in a bathroom stall to be alone, now sits in a vast empty penthouse, just as alone, but for entirely different reasons. The loneliness has changed its shape, but it has never truly left me. Sometimes I see Mark. He's a shell of the man he was. He keeps his head down, he does his work, he avoids my gaze. Seeing him does not bring me the satisfaction I thought it would. It is a hollow victory. It feels like looking at a faded photograph of a battle that was won long ago. The anger that drove me for so long has cooled into something else, something colder and emptier. I destroyed him, yes. I made him regret everything, but what did I gain? His misery doesn't make me happy. It just serves as a quiet, constant reminder of the person I used to be and the monster I had to become to escape him. I have achieved the dream. I am the powerful man I always wanted to be, but the dream is not what I imagined. It is a gilded cage. I am free from the bullies of my past, but I am a prisoner of my present. I am trapped by the empire I built. I have to constantly watch my back, anticipating the next threat, the next betrayal. The fear I used to feel walking the halls of Northgate High has been replaced by a different kind of fear, a constant, low-grade paranoia, the fear of losing everything I fought so hard to build. I won the game, but I find myself wondering if the price was worth it. Power is a strange and seductive force. I sought it to protect myself. I wanted enough power so that no one could ever hurt me again. And in that, I succeeded. No one shoves me against lockers anymore. No one laughs at my expense. But power has its own gravity. It pulls everything toward it. It corrupts, it isolates. I built my kingdom on a foundation of secrets and fear, and now I must live there. I traded one kind of prison for another. The first was made of cinder blocks and teenage cruelty. This one is made of glass and steel and the silent, watchful eyes of my enemies. Respect is not something you can take by force. That is not respect, it is fear. I learned this too late. The respect I command is conditional. It lasts only as long as I am useful or dangerous. It is not the genuine admiration that is earned through kindness or integrity. I see it in the eyes of my employees, my associates, even my so-called partners. It is a calculated deference, a mask they wear in my presence. I wanted to be seen, but now I wonder if anyone sees the real me, or if that person even exists anymore, or if he died somewhere along the way, buried under the weight of the money and the power. What did I learn from all of this? I learned that the world is not divided into the strong and the weak. Everyone is weak in their own way. Mark was weak, his strength a fragile illusion built on the fear of others. I was weak, my power a fortress built to hide my own insecurities. We are all just scared children looking for a way to feel safe. Some of us find it in cruelty, others in wealth, others in loyalty, but it is all just a defense against the chaos of the world. My revenge on Mark didn't fix the broken parts of me, it just created a new set of broken pieces. In the end, the ultimate lesson is about control. I have control over my city, my businesses, and the lives of many people, but I have lost control over my own life. My life is dictated by the needs of the empire. It is a relentless, demanding master. I am the king, but I am also its first and most dedicated servant. I have the crown, but it is heavier than I ever imagined. The boy who dreamed of a new life got what he wanted. He just never stopped to consider what that new life would cost him. And the price I'm finding is everything.